Hey everybody, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools channel. And today we're gonna do some cleaning and maintenance of this miter saw right here. It's full of dust. I've been putting it through its paces in this studio, cutting a lot of demo wood for the projects that I put on the videos, okay? But if you didn't know already, dust and debris are some of the biggest contributors to the lack of performance and eventually the ultimate decline of your equipment. So you want to maintain all of your equipment across the board, okay? So today we're going to get right into that and show you how to clean your miter saw. Okay guys, just want you guys to get a close-up of how dirty, I should say, or dusty this miter saw has become because of my lack of maintenance, right? Look at all that dust built up in there, not to mention all the dust in the dust bag that hasn't been emptied yet. See, all this dust is not good for your machine. See if I can turn it around a little bit. Look at all that dust. And even when the dust is not visible, it doesn't mean it's not there in places like, say, the motor housing right here. We're gonna look at that later. And another important part is this sliding housing as well. So when you slide the miter saw back and forth, dust can get built up in this sliding housing, and those bearings can get gunked up with dust. So we'll look at that later as well. See all that dust? Dust gets inside of all of this. All through the crevices and cracks. Now you may not be able to get all of the dust, but you want to concentrate on the essential parts of your equipment, especially the motor housing of a power tool or motorized equipment or anything that slides, anything that's essential. And we'll look at the blade as well. I think you see some dust built up on the blade tips. Okay, they need to be cleaned as well. Okay guys, so we're gonna blow off our miter saw first, and we're gonna do that before we take anything apart and clean some of the inside parts that we spoke of earlier, right? But this right here is a blowgun attachment that you can find, well, you should be able to find it at, your local hardware store. I actually got this at AutoZone because I couldn't find it at my local hardware store for whatever reason. I couldn't understand why. But this is very essential. You get one of these, and this is the male plug here that you can screw into the bottom of this, okay? And plug it into your hose. They also sell the male and the female plugs separately, okay? This is the female, this is the male. They sell those separately. So let's go ahead and take our male and screw it into our gun. You may want to take a wrench to tighten this a little bit. Okay, by the way, guys, once you get your tank pressure up to where it needs to be, okay, this one is about 165 PSI. Once you get that needle up there, when you turn it on, once it builds up, you want to make sure that you have some regular pressure as well. Notice here that it's almost down to 0, right? So if it's there, you're not going to get any air out of your hose. So in order to get some air into there, just go here, turn this knob all the way to the right. So you can get some air in your hoses. Okay, So now that we've cleaned the miter saw off, let's take a look inside the motor housing right here and make sure that, there's no dust built up in there. And we're also going to look at the brush assemblies to make sure the brushes are in shape as well. But before we do that, always make sure that your equipment is unplugged. You're going to need a Phillips and a flathead screwdriver, so make sure you have those on hand when you take this off. Okay guys, let's take a closer look inside the motor housing, okay? So let me zoom in a little bit more so you guys can get a better view. Now, this right here is the armature, right? So if I spin the blade, you see that the armature spins, okay? Now the armature is not necessarily connected to the blade itself. Let me zoom out. You can see this is the blade back here, and this whole housing houses the armature, right? But the armature doesn't contact the blade directly. It's a differential system, so there's a gear that's connected to the armature, which in turn is connected to the blade, and that's how the blade spins. So these are the brush assemblies, and if you look down there and you see this dark grayish blackish material, that's contacting or slightly contacting the armature, right? Can you see those? Those are the brushes, carbon brushes, okay? So electrical current is applied through these brush assemblies, right? And electromagnetic force causes the armature to spin. That's how that works. Now, sometimes the carbon from those brushes can accumulate in the armature, and you have to clean the armature out. And you probably have to take it out of the machine and clean it out. You can use some industrial cleaning solvent to clean the armature in those cases when you find carbon deposits in them. Now let's make sure the brush assemblies are in good condition. The great thing about this brand is that they make the brush assemblies pretty accessible. All you have to do is unscrew this cap on this side for one brush and a cap on this side for the other. Okay guys, let's go ahead and take the cap off of one of the brushes. So the important thing to remember is that these brushes are spring loaded. So when you're taking the cap off, you want to make sure that you do it slowly so the spring-loaded brush doesn't pop out on you and fall all over the place. And you have to replace the brushes in the same orientation that you took them out. In other words, you got to put them in the same way you took them out. So notice how the curvature of the spring comes out. You got to make sure that you put it back in with the curvature in the same orientation that you took it out. So with these brushes, they have to have at least 1/4 of an inch left before you have to replace them. You also want to check for any wear and tear on the brushes, like cracks or anything like that. Also, if you're going to replace your brushes with new brushes, make sure that you replace both brushes. Don't just replace one side, just like in a car. Most of the times you want to replace both tires on each side, right? It's the same with these brushes. So it has a lot more life left in them. So let's go ahead and put it back in the same way we took it out. Place the cap on. And you don't need to over tighten the cap when you screw it back on. And go ahead and replace the housing cover. So now let's tackle what's inside the housing for the sliding mechanism. It may be some dust or debris caked up in there, and we want to see what's going on. Okay guys, I couldn't take this portion off and slide the whole assembly off so we can look inside these tubes here to see what's going on, because it has pins instead of screws. If you notice, these are pins. And to take those out is really going to be a headache, and to put them back in is going to be a headache as well. So I decided not to do that, but I will show you guys what can happen. So what I did is I took the plate off, this metal plate right here, and slid it out. And as you can see guys, there's dust accumulated along the edges right here. Now these are rubber seals, okay? These are rubber seals that, once again, I'm not gonna try to mess with them and pull them out for you. But as you can see, if you're gonna do some deep cleaning and maintenance and you happen to remove this portion and pull the whole assembly out, you'll possibly see some dust accumulated inside these tubes as well. And if it's a lot of dust or debris, you can hear the dust crackling as you slide these rods back and forth. So just to give you an idea of what can go on inside there. But the seals look pretty tight. and they look like they're keeping a lot of dust out. Okay guys, when it comes to the blades, it's not as easy as blowing off dust with a blower. If you notice, you have these deposits on the blade tips here, okay? And they seem like they're caked in on the blade, melted in, okay? Why? Because when the blade contacts the material, like the wood, at such high speeds, it creates so much heat that some of the wood actually melts onto the blade. And this can create deposits on the blade like you see here. See those deposits on the blade tips? So these deposits can build up so much on the blade that the blade can become dull. And when it comes to cutting with a dull blade, that's not good. It can produce what's called tear out. In other words, your cuts won't be as sharp as they should be. Now, what you can do to get rid of those deposits is you can soak your blade in a solution that's friendly to carbide blades. Now, I see a lot of recommendations to use oven cleaner and easy off and things like that, but that's actually very damaging to carbide blades, so you don't want to do that. You want to place it in a solution like Simple Green or a citrus-based solution and soak it in there for a few minutes. Take a scrub brush and go around the blade tips and scrub all that resin and debris off of there. And you should have a good blade after that. And one more thing, you may want to take a cotton swab or a Q-tip or a microfiber cloth to wipe off that LED light that we all like so much when we cut our material. Miter saws are great tools to have, and if you have anything of value, you want to make sure that it lasts as long as possible. So if you picked up something that I put down in this video, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.